so much, Apostle James. And thank you guys for tuning in to CNE, Christian Networking Entrepreneurs, the show where emerging entrepreneurs, small business owners, and community leaders come for business and personal development. So welcome to the show today, October 1st, 2020. And today we have a phenomenal guest. His name is Jeff Caliguire. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Teresa, Super T, Pastor T. It is just so good to be with you. And I just feel like we get to hang out together and invite some friends to hang out with us. So I am so excited about this show. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm so excited to have you here. So you guys don't know, I met Jeff way back in like 2014, 15. He was my coach for about a year or so, really helped me with some things in my life and helped me get direction with things going on. So Jeff, tell the viewing audience a little bit about yourself. We call this part ETR, earn the right. So I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself, how you can earn the right to give us the information that you're going to give us today.
Wow. Well, I don't know if I won't say I earned the right. I'll look at it as grace.
Okay.
But it is good to be here. I am a guy born in New Jersey, born outside of New York City, youngest of three kids, who now gets to live in Colorado. I live right outside of Boulder. Looking out my window, I can see mountains and chickens. So that's not what a guy from New Jersey was used to. But for the last 19 years, I have had the incredible privilege of coaching people like Teresa McCurry, who have a dream inside of them, a vision, and they have gifts and abilities that are just ready to go. And I feel like my job is to come alongside of people like Teresa and others that I get to coach and just be their encourager and help draw them out. And so I am a coach. Didn't know I'd ever be a coach. I was a pastor to begin with, and spent 10 years leading a church, pastoring a church in Boston, and now for the past 19 years have been coaching.
Wow, that is really cool. So how did it come about? How did you like, okay, I think it's something here. You know, you just automatically coach people, right? It's just like second nature for you. And then when did you say, you know what, it's something to this coaching thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, back when I started coaching, which was about 1999, and then I went full time in 2001, people would say to me, Pastor T, what sport do you coach? And I think they'd look at me and they figure I certainly wasn't a gymnast. I probably wasn't a good baseball player. They usually say football, which was at least close to things I played. But coaching came for me as I realized that I really have a desire to develop the potential inside of people that often goes undeveloped, and I'd even seen undeveloped in my own life. And so the whole concept of coaching was just really starting to emerge in the 1990s. In fact, Teresa, do you know where the derivation of the word coach comes from? Because I didn't.
I have no idea where the word coach comes from.
All right. So, I mean, most of us don't, right? We just assume, well, that's, some sports coach. But a coach, I just learned this a few years ago. It actually comes from like Coach Germany, where they made coaches. They made stage coaches. They made coaches and buggies. So what a coach is someone who comes alongside of someone else and helps them get to where they need to go. Okay. Well, I mean, we've experienced that with coaches in our sports, and most of us, especially guys, and now most women too, if you've had a coach, you have a deep respect for them, because often they see something inside of you, but they help you get to where you need to go. So, I mean, that didn't exist 20 years ago, 25 years ago, but it's actually the second fastest growing profession, according to some studies on the planet, that coaching is growing. And I mean, I was a pastor who really desired to develop people. Right. I just hadn't had a lot of those tools, and I didn't know that was a possibility.
Yeah, because I mean, as a pastor, then looking at your background, you went to the seminary school.
There you go. There you go.
And you also went to college. So what did you go to college for?
To play football and be in a fraternity, and you'd think I would have gone for the education, but I didn't know better. But I ended up getting a government major,
Okay.
and studied political science.
Okay.
And that was where, when I was there, really, I mean, I found Christ. I found Christ in a real way, and I'd love to say it was in church. It was actually out after a grain alcohol fraternity party,
Okay.
where I looked at my life and I said, all right, I need purpose more than just feeding my body. I need to find, what am I on this planet to do? And open the Bible. In fact, I literally have the same Bible here that I
Do you really?
opened then. I mean, it's beat up, but I opened a Bible that my grandmother had given me, and found that there was life and peace there that I didn't have anywhere else in my life.
Wow. So you found Christ in college?
Yeah, I mean, I'd had some grandmothers who prayed for me.
Of course.
I had some examples. I'd been to a couple of retreats, but it really wasn't, often, like, Pastor T, until you hit bottom in some way, you don't go, is there more? Is there God? And so for me, it was after kind of trashing my life that I reached out and found Jesus.
Amen. That's a blessing. So did you do anything with your political science degree?
um, yeah, I mean, avoid it in some ways. But I mean, I think it set me up. It set me up to be asking questions. I mean, I think a question that I've been asking for all this time, Teresa, is how do people change? And I think I went into government because I thought, well, maybe it's, that's how people change, and nothing wrong with government or people who work with it. But I found that most people don't change because of the government. They change because of a person who loves them. They change because of someone who comes into their life, who sees something in them, who loves them and believes in them. And I realized that government and heading that direction wasn't where I found that was going to bring about that kind of transformation.
Okay. Awesome. So what about when you started pastoring the church? Did you see the change that you were looking for in the people?
Um, to an extent, yes. I mean, yeah. I believe in the church. I believe in pastors. What I realized is, as the more the church grew, the more I felt like I was being removed from the one-on-one or the one-on small group that I really came alive with.
Right.
And I think there's some people who go to seminary looking for that because they want to bring that kind of change. And coaching didn't exist at the time, so there was no way to do that as a profession. But what I've seen is that there's a difference between education and extraction. Okay, and education is bringing knowledge, information, wisdom to people. Extraction is where you draw out from them what God is doing in your life. One of the things I've come to believe, even my kids have helped me believe this, is that God is inside of us. He's closer than we ever imagine. A lot of us tend to believe, God is way up there. He's out there somewhere. And yet, Jesus says the kingdom of God is within you.
Within you.
And so what would it look like to have people who come alongside and draw out what God is in your life? So extraction, okay, means that you're going and you're finding the gold. You're seeking what God has put in somebody. And again, that didn't exist, that I knew of 20 years ago. And so that's where coaching, I say this to coaches, and I'll say it here. I believe coaches are today's new spiritual leaders.
Okay.
Not because there's not other spiritual leaders,
right,
but coaches are able to come alongside of business leaders, political leaders, people in transition, youth, and they can draw out what God is doing in them and help them see it. And I just find that I love that, and I love helping other coaches see the difference they can make.
Amen. So when you talk about the education and the extraction, so I'm processing like the education is me just teaching you about the word of God, but the extraction is actually helping come alive on the inside of you, whatever that God-given purpose is that he's placing you. Is that right? Or correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, you are so right. You're
Okay.
right. And you know, like one of the main tools that a teacher has is proposition, right? They teach. What a coach has is usually questions and listening.
Okay.
Okay. And so one of the most important things that we can do as we're growing somebody is ask them an amazing question. There was an actress a number of years ago, Vanessa Redgrave. That's who it was. She said that questions that what most people, and actually let me give you a different quote because I'm blanking on hers.
Okay.
Jonas Salk, who invented the polio vaccine.
Okay.
He said, what most people believe as the moment of discovery is really the discovery of the question. Okay. So what a coach does is they bring a question to you that draws you. Actually, what Vanessa Redgrave said is ask the right questions and you'll get the right answers. Okay. So you know, again, there's nothing wrong with propositional truth. But my wife Mindy was speaking at a conference a couple of years ago, Teresa. She leads a ministry called Soul Care,
Okay.
soulcare.com. And it's amazing to have a wife who, I mean, I'm sitting here listening. She was over there speaking on an interview today, and I was taking notes thinking, oh, I should listen to that. But she was talking at the Q conference a few years ago, and she said, there's a difference between the transfer of information and transformation. And I listened to that. I'm like, what did you just say? There's a difference between the transfer of information and transformation. What do you think that means? Like, as you hear that, what sticks out to you? I mean,
when I think about it, you said the transfer of information. I'm just telling you something, you're receiving it. But a transformation is like that. I'm going to take that information in and it's going to change my life. You know, so even when you were talking about the education and the extraction, was that the word you used? Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. So I remember it made me think about when you were coaching me. So when you were coaching me, I mean, you really helped inspire me come to life, right?
Because that wasn't hard. That wasn't hard.
Well, that's good. So you really helped inspire me come to life. And you was just like making it just so simple. So common denominator is so clear. Okay, well, what's the difference in motivation and inspiration? Why aren't you an inspirational speaker? What makes you a motivational speaker? So that goes back to what you said. Right. It's not just, it's transformation. So you transform the way that I think, and you didn't just give me information. It was information that opened up something that was already inside of me.
Right. Yeah. And again, that's not hard, especially because you had inside you you were born to inspire.
Amen.
Like that is who you are. That is how God created you.
Amen.
You're born to inspire and ignite fires in other people that they didn't even know that fire could be built into a flame. And you're an amazing example of it. So as a coach, my job isn't to give you something that you don't have. My job is to extract it and help you see it.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's why I believe that coaches are today's new spiritual leaders, because they can extract what God has put inside of somebody. And you know, God's put it inside. They have it already. But so many of us have been beat down. You know, we've been beat down because we heard people tell us, well, you can't do that.
Right.
You're not that smart. You can't build a business. You can't speak publicly. And it was probably because of something in them, right? I mean, you've probably had people tell you things like that too, Teresa, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't listen to it, but yeah.
You didn't listen. But how come you didn't listen? How come?
Like you said, it was just something inside of me that just knew that, you know, it doesn't matter what you say. And it's ironic, you will see, I remember somebody telling me at this time, I think it was a social worker, that I should not pursue the beauty industry. She told me that I shouldn't pursue the beauty industry because it was so volatile, and you might have customers today, you might not have customers tomorrow. And when I opened up my salon and spa, I wish I knew her name. I wish I would have invited her to come and get a service to see what she was telling me that I couldn't do. So
Yeah, I mean, and every entrepreneur who goes into anything will have the naysayers, and you'll have people who will say, no, I don't want to come to your salon. I don't want to use your business. I don't want to hire you as a coach. And so, I mean, one of the reasons we need the inspirers and the coaches in our lives is because they need to counteract and they need to pull out what we really do have to offer, because there's so many voices that are going to tell you, you can't. And, you know, we can listen. I mean, you know, what would you be doing if you'd listened to those voices? You wouldn't be doing a lot of what you're doing now. I mean, you know, you're a woman, you can't do those things. You're too young, you're too old, you're not educated enough. And, you know, those things crush a lot of what God has put inside of people.
So when it comes to the transformational coaching, so the transformational coaching, when you say that's like, I hear what you're saying, but what makes a coach and a transformational coach a transformational coach?
Great question. Great question. So, so coaching is helping someone move from where they are to where they need to go. It's the transportation term. Okay. So number one, a lot of people don't know the transformational person they really are. You know, C.S. Lewis talked about that, you know, a lot of us just don't know that we live in a mud puddle when God has called us to swim in an ocean. Okay. So part of it is that a transformational coach can see the transformed you. There's an element of faith that I think of Martin Luther King saying, I may not be the man I could be. I may not be the man I would be. I may not be the man I should be, but thank God I'm not the man I once was.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so like the transformational coach sees that in you, and that is a big jump. Okay. It's not a little tweak. For most of us to be who God really created us to be is to live into an us that we may not recognize. I mean, even just seeing and knowing what you're doing now, Teresa, I mean, even in 3 or 4 years, you have stepped into things. You've come and accepted your calling. And so a transformation is going to the caterpillar. You're going to be a butterfly someday. And the caterpillar is going to go, what are you talking about? I see it. You may not see it, but I see it. And so there's an element of the transformational coach has faith, not to have someone become who they're not, but to become the butterfly that they really are. And
I love that.
And yet, you know, I mean, we know there were people who came into our lives, whether they were teachers or parents or coaches, who saw something. In fact, I was just telling somebody, I played a year of college football, okay, but it helped me get into the college that I went to. And so a person asked me, you know, what made you be willing to apply to play football in college? And I said, I saw my football coach one day after a gym class, and I said to him, do you think I could play college football? And without skipping a beat, he said, a college would be lucky to have a guy like you. I mean, in that 1 second, he could have built my dream or crushed my dream.
Right. That's good. So when you said, you know, the transformational coach is looking at you through the lens of faith, you know, the transformational coach is looking at not where you are right now, but what you could be, you know, with the right nurturing, the right coaching, the right inspiration, or what have you. And it's ironic when you say that, because I always gonna come back to me in our coaching sessions. And I remember going back to the motivation and the inspiration. So the motivation, I'm gonna motivate you to do something that I want you to do, right? If I inspire you, I'm inspiring you to do something that's already on the inside of you. And then it's just bringing that thing to fruition, right? So when you talk about spiritual leaders, so you're saying transformational coaches are today's spiritual leaders. Expound on that.
Yeah. So what you were saying, I mean, often there's very few people in our lives who are building into us who don't have some kind of responsibility or agenda. Okay. I believe that more coaches and pastors and leaders need to learn from coaching. But what a coach does is they have no other agenda except for you to become who you are supposed to be.
Okay.
And like their job is to free you, is to empower you, not because they're getting, if you win, I mean, like, so when I come and see people like you who I've been able to, by the grace of God, coach doing great things, I am inspired, I am encouraged. Okay. But I don't get another check on my, it's not like, it's not building anything for me. So I think there's few people in life who have no other agenda but to build into us. And I don't believe every coach needs to be a paid professional. I mean, I think there's people who can retire and coach and mentor young women, young men, people who are in life transition. And so I don't believe every coach needs to be paid, but I do believe there's been a need for a profession that is about helping someone get to where they need to go, um, and have someone who'll walk with them. So, like, I get this question a bunch, Teresa. What's the difference between a counselor and a coach? You ever get that question?
I have. Oh, for me, it wasn't a counselor. It was what's the difference in doing consulting? So
Consulting. All right.
right.
Yeah.
So I would get it like consultants because with your help, I became a beauty entrepreneur coach. Not doing that anymore, but we'll talk about that later. But with your help, and it's like you just made me niche it, be specific. Who can I help? How can I help? And so it's like, okay, no, I'm not a beauty consultant. I'm a beauty entrepreneur coach. So it was different because, like you said, the coach, I think a consultant kind of like almost helps you do the work, right? I'm just telling you what to do and giving you examples, and it's up to you to do the work.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, in a sense, the coach, like I tell people, like, if you're going to climb a mountain, the mentor, okay, the mentor might say, hey, I've climbed this mountain before. Let me tell you how to, where to go, what paths to go. The consultant might say, hey, let me give you the strategy and the maps for the mountain. The coach is going to say, hey, let's make sure that's the right mountain. Okay. Is that really the mountain you're supposed to climb? And then let's create a plan, think through what is the best way for you to climb a mountain. When you've climbed a mountain in the past, what works for you? All
Mm-hmm.
right. And then I'm going to go with you, and I'm going to go on the journey and check in, like, where you are in the different places in the mountain. A counselor is going to help you be healed from the past mountains and molehills you've climbed, right? They know that you've been wiped out on some of your mountains. They know that some people who climb mountains with you kicked you and beat you, and you've got wounds because of mountains. All right.
Right.
Thank God for counselors. All right. We need our counselors. And as a coach, I know, and I need to know when to go, hey, you need to go work with a counselor.
Right.
But the coach is going to deal with your mindset. They're going to deal with issues, but they're going to be walking with you towards the conclusion of getting to the top of the mountain and getting safely home.
Awesome. That's a good example to point out those three and what the expectation would be if I was working with a mentor, if I was working with a counselor, or if I'm working with a coach. This is
Right.
what I can expect to get. But I'm still loving the whole spiritual leader,
Good.
the
Thanks for coming
whole
back to that.
coaching thing is about spiritual leadership in
Yep.
today's society. We haven't even talked about COVID, but I
Mhm.
mean, where are you going with the whole we are the new spiritual leaders as coaches?
Right. Right. Well, so one of the things that I've become super passionate about is the inner game of somebody's life. There was a book that was on my nightstand when I was growing up. I was all into sports, and it was called The Inner Game of Tennis. Okay. Well, in the spiritual life, we get to be connected to the ultimate inner game. Okay. And the Bible in Romans 12:2, it talks about that we are to be transformed by the renewing of our mind.
Yes.
Okay. And that is a spiritual transformation that is changing the way we think. right? And science is even now saying, you know, the brain changes. It used to be that people looked at the brain and said, hey, if that's the way you are, you're stuck with that brain. There's a concept that's called neuroplasticity, okay, like neuroscience. Neuroplasticity means that the brain can actually change itself. Okay, our thoughts literally change the cells and the neurons inside of our brains. Okay, is that spiritual? Well, I believe so, because I believe that we are not just brains, we are not just bodies, we've been given the breath of God. We've been given souls. And you know, I went to seminary and I didn't know, like, what is the soul? I mean, you get soul food and soul music and, you know, right? But what is the soul? Or you get the salvation of the soul, right?
Yeah.
But like God breathed into us in Genesis chapter 1, we became a living soul, right? Like we became, and the concept of, all right, you know, most of us know we're supposed to take care of our bodies.
Right.
Like, you know, in fact, I laugh, like when I was, when, you know, back, I know I'm a little older than you, Teresa, but I mean, it used to be that I thought, like, you know, bananas were good for you. You know,
Mhm.
I thought fruit was good for you. I used to eat like oats and be thinking that that was the best energy. You know, eggs, like, you know, what's good for you, right?
Yeah.
And now, like, there's all these questions of what, and yet we know that we've got to take care of our bodies. You know,
Mhm.
we've got to go to work out, we've got to eat right. If we don't, and yet, what about the soul? You know, if God has given us this breath of life, God breathed into us and we became living beings. Years ago, my wife and I just said, how do we care for the soul? You know, like what does it mean to be intentional about doing that? And I mean, I think there was a very simple look at the spiritual life, and there's been leaders like Dallas Willard and others who have started to wake us up to there really are practices that help us grow spiritually. But who comes into our lives who can help us understand how do we become the spiritually alive people that we're supposed to be?
I think that's an amazing point. And then the point about our mindset and then how our brain cells change. You know, you can almost see it. You know, it's like when you think about it, you say mind, body, and no, you say spirit, soul, and body. So when we talk about our soul, most of the time we're talking about our mind, our will, our emotions, and our intellect.
Right.
So knowing that now scientifically they're saying that when your mind changes, your cells and all of that stuff changes. That's so God, right?
It's
It's like
incredible.
the
It's incredible.
renewing of your mind, the transformation of your mind. And then we as Christians, we understand that the battlefield takes place in our mind. And then we understand that if we're bitter and we're resentful and we have fear and we have doubt, it can physically make us sick.
Yeah. Well, and Teresa, you know, I think all of us have looked at our lives at one point or another, and we've said, why am I not more mature? Why am I not more loving? Why am I not more peaceful? Why do I not have more peace? And so, you know, years ago, I remember I literally, I was a pastor of our church, and I'm not proud of this, but somebody left our church and they told me they were leaving. I get off the phone with them, and back in those days, we used to have this thing called a concordance, all right? That was a huge blue book.
Yeah.
Did you ever see one of
I
those?
got one.
You got one. All right. All right. I don't have mine anymore because of this. I picked up a concordance, I threw it across the room. It broke all into pieces. Okay. And my wife walked in the door and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I'm terrible." And I think there's times that we hit, you know, pockets in our lives where we are not doing well. And at that time, what do we need? What is going on in our soul? And what I realized is I believed I could be more mature. I believed I could have more joy and be, you know, like the Bible says one of the fruits of the spirit is joy, and yet most of my time in my life was not joyful. And so that's a spiritual question. Why am I not experiencing more joy? Why am I not experiencing more life in my soul? Why am I throwing concordances across the room? All right. So when you have those things happen, you go, what's not working in my spiritual life? You know, and that's where I feel like part of my journey over the last 20-25 years is to go, number one, how do I change and keep changing? And number two, how do I help others who want to change become who God wants them to be? And that is a spiritual journey and a spiritual question.
And that is so true. And it's like, to me, I think sometimes people look at us as spiritual leaders, pastors, or whatever. Like, we don't have those issues. What? You threw a concordance, Jeff? Shame on you. You know what I'm saying? But
Thank you. Give me more. Beat me up. Beat me up. Yeah.
I feel the same way. And it's like, when you talk about the fruit of the spirit, it's like I was edgy, I was short, I was snappy, I was not showing love because people were getting on my last nerve, right? And then I said, okay, Lord, what do I need to do? And he took me to the fruit of the spirit, and I started reading the spirit: love, joy, peace, gentleness, long suffering, self-control, and was just really going over that and started meditating on that and started eating that word every day. And I seen myself change. My husband seen me change. He even recognized, oh my God, you're changing. And then when I would revert back to those words, he would say, I think you need to
Where'd you go? That's right. Well, so
need to start reading the fruit of the spirit again.
yeah. I mean, and so there is the sense that, we need to be connected to the vine, and that when we're connected to the vine, it affects us physically, spiritually, emotionally. And so when we're disconnected, when we're not loving, all those things, it's a spiritual issue. So the reason I brought the Bible, the one that, that I've had for a long, long time, is there's a verse in 3 John that most of us, would read right past, that I feel like applies to this, Teresa. Okay. Like, I mean, most of us would go, I didn't even know there was a 3 John. I mean, I knew there was a John. He wrote 3 more books.
And I'm thinking that you're going to say something about prosper and be in health, even as our soul prospers.
There you go. That's it. You nailed it. Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may go well with you, even as your soul is getting along well, or even as your soul is prospering. So how come you knew that scripture, Teresa? Besides, I know you're a Bible knowledge junkie.
My husband and I, we say that almost every day when we pray. We say, because it's like we want to prosper and be in health, and not just physical health. We want our soul to prosper as well. Yes. Because especially now with you arming me with that information, as our soul prosper, our mind changes, understanding that the battlefield takes place in the mind. So if your mind is changing, your mind is getting stronger and gearing towards your spirituality, and that's just going to help you be even more prosperous.
Yes. I mean, so Jesus said something, that we probably have heard. He said, what does it prosper a man or woman if you gain the whole world and yet you forfeit your soul? Okay. Yeah. You lose your soul. And we tend to think of that often as, well, you don't want to go to hell, you don't want to not, but Jesus cared a lot about the way we lived our everyday life. Okay. So that means we have to prioritize our souls and the prosperity of our souls. And so part of the question of how do people change is how do we intentionally prioritize our souls every day so that it brings that into our marriage, it brings it into our parenting, it brings it into our business, it brings it into our creativity, it brings it into our finances. Every aspect of those things is not just about getting more knowledge, it's about having a prosperous soul. And as our soul prospers, our health prospers. As our soul prospers, I mean, and of course there's disease, there's challenges, there's other people, okay? But Jesus seemed to know that life's not all about gaining the world, even growing great businesses, which I am all about, which I know you are.
Yes.
But it's not going to matter until you prioritize your soul. And when you prioritize your soul, you're going to bring the better you to those things.
That is so true. And that brings me to right now you have the soul challenge going on. Tell the viewing audience what does that look like? What does that mean? The
Yeah.
soul challenge.
Yeah, so most people don't put coaching, soul, and challenge together, right? I mean, those are like, they're kind of like, there was a commercial and
Morons.
a commercial a number of years ago that was about ski jumping and recliners. Like, let's bring those things together, But so kind of like soul and coaching and challenge. So I've been coaching now for 19 years, okay? And what like I've been saying, I've come to believe is that the real change happens when we get to the level of the soul, when we draw out what God is really doing at a deep level, when we help other people see what God has created them in their soul. And the guy's last name is Thurman, and you may know this quote because I know it would be that what is it? Golly, I should have written that quote down. But Saint Irenaeus said, that the glory of God is a man fully alive.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so that life comes from the life of the soul. So coaching that is just about information or even about goals, okay, is good. But what I believe is great is when we're able to equip coaches who know how to draw out the life of the soul, know
Yeah.
how to draw out your real passion. So like in coaching people, I'll be coaching somebody and I, whether I can see them or I'm just on the phone, they'll have tears in their eyes and they go, I don't even know why I'm crying. And what I've come to see is like the soul is revealing itself. Like somebody's saying, I just care about, people who are discouraged and depressed. I care about inspiring people. And something inside of them is almost like their soul is showing up.
Open up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a holy moment.
It really is. It really is. Because it's like one day your soul just opens up and it's like somebody is speaking directly to your soul,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah, that matters. So why do you think coaching the soul matters for such a time as this?
Well, I mean, that's not I mean, you've seen we are in a time of great anxiety and stress. We're more divided, right? I mean, there's divisions, there's fractured relationships. I mean, some statistics to me are mind-boggling, such as, do you know that 20 to 22 service people or veterans kill themselves each day? Okay, I mean, like crazy. I mean, and I've got people connected to me, family, distant family, who've committed suicide. I know. I mean, just today, somebody else told me about the son of a friend who overdosed, and so we've got soul issues going on. Okay, and that's where I believe that there's just loneliness. Okay, um, I'll tell a story, Teresa. There was years ago, I was still pastoring, and there was a gathering with a Fortune 100 business leader who had just retired. This was in Boston, and it was a gathering of business leaders and pastors. I think there were 50 business leaders, 50 pastors meeting with this former CEO, and he talked about his experience in leadership. And I got to ask him a question. They had a question and answer time, and I said to him, what would you say you would do differently if you were to, lead your company again? And he said he looked down and just almost seemed like a long time, and he looked up with tears that just like started like a waterwork streaming down his face. He said, I was so lonely. He said, I wished I had people in my life who I could tell what was really going on.
Wow.
I didn't have safe places. And as I heard that, tears started to stream down my face too.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's going on with me? But I think it's that sense that we're lonely. I mean, COVID has created loneliness. We're isolated. And so one of the things in the Garden of Eden, God says it's not good for man to be alone. And so we need the people in our lives who create the space for community. And so, in a time where so many people are more isolated than ever, I feel like coaches and people equipped to coach can bring that kind of community to leaders and to people who are in any phase of their life. I
Yeah.
mean, we know that 20 somethings, they social media isn't working. Okay. It's not creating the kind of community that we need.
Yeah.
So I would say, what would happen in our world if we learn how to better create that safety and community?
Yeah. That's good, because I think no matter what level you're on, you need community. You need a safe place that you can lay your head. You need
Mhm.
somebody that you can be transparent with. You don't always have to show up as the leader or show up as whatever, as the owner. You need a group of people that you can have community with. So talking about that, what does a healthy soul look like?
Yeah. So going back, like again, like when we ask, what does a healthy person physically look like?
Right.
Like we have these pictures of what they're supposed to look like. Usually it just, gives a body. But even in physical health, we've had a hard time defining what does it look like, to have health. But we have the Bible, where
Mhm.
you can go back to the Bible and see what did God intend us to look like if we really had healthy souls. Okay.
Okay.
So I mean, I want to encourage all our listeners or watchers, I guess, to go
Oh,
to
oh,
both, go to Genesis chapter 2 and ask what does a healthy soul look like according to Genesis chapter 2. And I want to bring out four things that are in Genesis chapter 2 that are almost like, magnetic north for what it looks like to have a healthy soul. Okay.
okay.
So number one, it talks about something again that most of us, probably you don't, because you see these things, but most of us would skip right by. It says that God created trees that were beautiful to look at and good for eating.
Mm-hmm.
Why does the Bible describe that they were beautiful to look at and good for eating? Okay. And again, it's like this is before the fall. This is before we get to sin. We have beautiful trees and good to eat trees. And what I've come to believe is that the first thing that we look for when we're helping coach and create a healthy soul is you relish beauty. You relish the things that you have. You're grateful. Okay. Like, man, that tree is beautiful. I mean, the fall right now, right? Wow, that tree is beautiful. Out of here in Colorado, we've got the what are the name of those trees? Not pine. They're beech, or I can't remember the name of it, but they
Mm-hmm.
have big, beautiful yellow leaves. All right. So the whole concept of number one is we're spending time each day appreciating. Okay, we appreciate beauty. We treasure our food. We're not just chewing right through it. We take the time to do that. The second thing it talks about, although it talks about more than just a few, but number two, it talks about responsibility. Okay, God gives meaningful responsibility to Adam to care for the garden. And what I've come to believe is we all need our meaningful responsibility. We need to know, what has God made for me to do? It's like, have you ever been a part of a gathering, Teresa, and you've got no role and you're just standing there?
You know me, Jeff. I'm gonna do something.
You're going to do something. You're going to find it. But when you don't have a role, how do you
Yeah,
feel?
you
How do you
feel
feel?
like a third wheel. Like you just, why am I here? You just
Yes.
sitting there. It's hard to just be the guest, right? You feel like
Yes.
you need to be doing something. And I love this whole responsibility piece. We can stay here all day, because I think that's something that's missing in a lot of people right now. It's like being responsible for whatever and for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it starts with us, right?
Yeah.
But the whole idea that God made us to bring our participation into the world. And so when we don't know what God's called us to do, what's the kingdom calling? What is the vision that God has for me? We're not fully alive. So part of what I believe that coaches can bring to our generation is the ability to draw that out and go, this is your kingdom responsibility.
Oh,
Okay. So that's part of soul health. Number three is God then tells Adam, You can eat from this tree, but you can't eat from that tree. Okay. Why does he do that? Because a healthy soul is able to have restraint. Okay. We
Mm.
don't always like that, but if we just, I mean, if you ever, you know, with kids, right? You can't just let them do anything. When a kid feels healthy restraint, they feel loved. Part of my job is to bring healthy restraint in my life, is to say, you know what? Jeff loves cookies. Jeff should not eat cookies all the time. Jeff loves wine and beer. He can't drink that all the time. Like, so having that, the ability to say no and be okay with that, is part of soul health.
All right.
Okay. That God has designed us to be able to say no. So addiction is when we can't say no. So part
Mm.
of our healing is being able to regain our own ability to say no. Okay.
And that's good, that whole restraint, because yeah, I mean, I like wine and I can't drink wine all day, every day. How would I go to work? How would I do whatever?
Exactly.
So just knowing that, I call it my communion. So when I have my communion, it's limited.
Yes, yes. So I mean, we feel good when we're able to say a healthy no. I mean, there's been all this talk about boundaries lately.
Hmm.
You know, when somebody else can't violate, we need to be able to say to other people no. And so again, like the health of the soul is part of our ability to say, hey, I would love wine, but I'm going to say no.
Okay.
Okay. So our being able to grow that is part of what even coaching can help. So like what I find when I'm coaching someone is I'm not just helping them say yes, I'm helping them say a good no. Okay.
That's good.
So
That's good.
that's number 3.
Yeah.
Number 4 is relationships that take away loneliness. Okay. It's not good for man to be alone. God creates this other person, and we just need soul friends in our lives. We need the people in our lives who we can have a depth of conversation with, who we can be our real self with, who we're not hidden with. And so God creates them so they're naked and unashamed with each other.
Yeah.
I think most people, most guys especially, I'll speak for guys, we have few or no soul friends.
Hmm.
Okay. And so the relationships that we need in our lives are the people who we can share the real us with, not dump on them.
Right.
Okay. But we can share the real us with. And again, you know, that can start in a counseling relationship, it can start in a coaching relationship, but we need those who where we can really be ourselves. And even if we have just a few of those, it frees our soul.
Yeah, and I think that with that, that's all you need is a few. You don't have to be this whole. I tell people it's one thing to be transparent, it's another thing to be an open book. And then with us having discernment from the Holy Spirit, we should know who to be transparent with and who to be an open book with, because you sharing some of your hangups with somebody is probably going to help set them free, you know?
Yeah.
So I love that. I think that that's really good. So the first one is appreciating beauty,
Mhm.
appreciating the beauty that God has around us. And if you're intentional about that, you can find that in anything, correct?
Absolutely. You find it in that light bulb. You know, yeah. I mean, it's best when you can find it in a beautiful tree that's turning color, right? But
Right.
you know, but we can find beauty if we say, God, what do I appreciate today? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
my dog is sitting right there, Barney. You know, I'll often start my day. In fact, every day I start my day with taking out my cell phone and I use Evernote and I write, what do I appreciate?
That's
And you know, I mean, I'll appreciate my wife, I'll appreciate my sons, my daughter-in-laws. Sometimes I look down and I go, man, I appreciate Barney, you know.
and that's good because like yesterday when I got off work, I had looked up and the clouds was like each way that you looked in the sky, the clouds were different. And I actually took out my cell phone and took pictures. And then I seen it was like a little rainbow in the corner. And I just appreciated the north, the south, the east, and the west, and took this and it just appreciated that. So it's just those little things for
Yes.
appreciation. The responsibility. That's number two, responsibility.
Responsibility. Yeah, I mean, and it's responsibility for something that matters.
Okay.
Okay. And how it matters is we need to understand that, you know, taking care of the garden was caring for the creation. So caring for our environment, making our bed, you know, like what doing the things that we're taking responsibility and creating environment, or we're bringing life to other people through our work. That brings life to our souls. We're meant for, and what uh, I used to work in the financial industry, and I used to help people retire. And what I found is it was really important not to have someone just leave their job. It was to say, if I'm leaving, what am I going to that matters? What
Mm-hmm.
am I going to do with this phase of my life that really is important? And so that even if you're retiring, you need to go, what is the work God's called me to now?
Yeah.
And there's all these studies that show if you don't have that, you'll lack health, you'll lack vitality, you won't want to get out of bed in the morning. So at every stage of our life, what does it look like to have that responsibility?
That responsibility and the restraint. I love the restraint, right? So I love the example of no matter how much I love to eat cake and cookies, I can't eat cake and cookies all day. The
What
restraint,
would it do to your soul if you did, right? You need a
it,
nap.
it, I need more than a nap. But in that restraint, just even knowing how to say no, because I think sometimes when you're a spiritual leader, people are under the misconception that you're going to say yes about everything all the time. And that's not true.
Yeah, and that's really important. I mean, if there's anybody listening, that is a pastor. I mean, I've been a pastor. I know you are a pastor. It is really important to know that you've been called to some things. You're not called to everything.
Everything.
You don't have every gift. You don't have every ability, and you fully alive is the best gift that you're bringing to those that you're leading. And so, if that means you need to go and say, "Hey, I'm taking 3 days off, or I'm taking a month off, or I'm going to go, fishing. I'm going to go, go and spend time at the beautician," right?
Mhm.
I mean, that is caring for you. You love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yeah.
And so much of us in leadership, we have a hard time saying yes to love ourselves,
Yeah.
and that's a critical function.
Yeah, that healthy restraint is good. And then the last one, the relationship, soul friends, having those relationships is critical and key to me, especially during this time of COVID. I mean, my husband and I, we always say, at least we have each other. And then our heart goes out to our single friends who live alone.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and like choosing, when I went through depression, I mean, I now look back and I know, and eventually I went on antidepressants, but when I was in depression, I would isolate from people. Okay. And that's one of the, signs almost of depression, is if we
Mhm.
continually isolate. So the opposite of that is when you spend time in healthy community. You're not always in healthy community because there's
Right.
something about the need for protection and solitude. But who is your healthy community that you need the life to be around, introvert or extrovert?
Right. Well, this has been good. We just been talking, talking, talking. I never even paused and gave you a chance to do a commercial and give out your information or anything. And we got like 6 more minutes to go. So at this time, would you give out your contact information and tell us about your coaching transformation academy?
Yeah, yeah. So like you've heard me say, I believe that coaches are today's new spiritual leaders, not the only spiritual leaders, but there are people who are going, you know what, I think this coaching thing might be me. And some of the signs of that are people confide in you. You're curious about people. You want to draw out the potential in people. And one of the things I know you've heard people say this to you, Teresa, is I've never told anybody this before, but okay, I can't tell anybody else this. And so coaches are often the confidants to people in leadership, confidants to people in life transition. And so there's a test. If you go to coachingtransformationacademy.com, big long URL, coachingtransformationacademy.com. All right. I even spell it wrong sometimes. Okay. So you may want to put a link, but if you go there, there's a thing that says, is coaching for me? And it's just an assessment to go, are you already a coach and you just need equipping? And one of the best ways to learn coaching is to be coached. Okay. That coaches need coaches, and coaching is learned through. So the way we've designed CTA, is what we call it for short, is that everybody has a coach. everybody gets coached because you experience it. You see the transformation it brings. So if you're listening and you're going, wow, I want to learn coaching and bring it to my team, or I want to potentially become a professional coach now, part-time, full-time, we've created a process and a community that is about that. And then I've written 3 books that I actually don't sell on Amazon or any place else, that are just, I've got some of them here. Let's see, here's 2 of them. Okay. One is called The 8 Coaching Habits. The other one's called The Thriving Coach. And then there's this one. Nope, that one's called The Thriving Coach too. I don't know where the other one is, but it's transformational coaching. But it's just equipping coaches who want to bring this coaching way of life to their leadership or become full-time coaches.
Yeah. So is that the only way you want them to contact you, through your website?
Yeah, I mean, jeffcaliguire.com is where I blog and write, all kinds of thoughts on these things. So you can go there as well and follow me there, and, sign up to receive things. So, there's the coaching, it's becoming a coach. And then the other thing is, there's coaches now that I'm working with who coach people who are asking, what is my purpose? How do I take this and focus what I'm doing in business? How do I grow my soul? And I know you coach as well, Teresa. And so, like, I would point people to you as well as an amazing coach, having worked with you and trained you and seen this inside of you. But there's other books. If you go on Amazon, look up Jeff Caliguire, you'll see that I like to write, and written a book called The Habits of Hope.
I have that book. I was waiting for you to mention the one that I have. I'm like, I got 1 or 2 of his books. I have The Habits of Hope. I got that.
Have you read it?
I have.
You have? All right.
That was way back, in 2000?
About 4 years ago.
Yeah, in 2016. I want to say I got that book for you, and then The Habits of Hope. So yeah, it was a very good read. Very good read.
Thank you.
So I appreciate that. And any closing remarks before we log out here in the next 4 minutes?
Yeah. So, again, coming back to the quote from the ancient church father Irenaeus, that God, the glory of God is a man or woman fully alive.
Fully alive.
And that is so important. So, like, when you're experiencing any symptoms that are like, there's something missing, there's an ache. It's almost like when you're feeling a little sick and you're starting to have something come in your throat. Now everybody stays away from you.
Right.
But there's symptoms of soul neglect. My wife and I have a process that we worked with that help people know what is soul neglect versus soul health.
Okay.
If you're experiencing things that where that you're meant for more, that there's something that's not fully alive, that you're feeling a discouragement, that's a time that you need to reach out. You need community, and it could be you need a coach. It could be, but don't settle. I think one of the things a lot of us is we go, hey, I'm just going to do this until I retire, or I guess I'll never love my life, love what I do. And that's where I go, you know what? You don't have to settle. You're meant for more. God made you unique. Your identity is one who is loved and favored. You're gifted. And my desire, and I know yours too, is to free the potential inside of God's people and change their lives and change other people's lives.
Amen. That's so good. Jeff, thank you so much for agreeing to be my guest today. We really appreciate everything that you shared and the whole thing about the soul. We really appreciate that. And as business leaders, as community leaders, as emerging entrepreneurs, I do know that your soul has to be together before you can help somebody in what they're doing. So thanks so much for your information. We appreciate you.
You're so welcome. And I appreciate you, Teresa. And Super T is how I've known you for many years, and you are Super T, and I love what you're doing. I love this thing. I would just say to your listeners, keep sharing it. Get the word out. Hit share.
Share, like, have a watch party. Yes, have a watch party for us. Yeah. So Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm your host, Teresa McCurry, also known as Pastor T, and this is Christian Networking Entrepreneurs, where we interview emerging entrepreneurs, small business owners, and community leaders. And remember, if you don't network, you don't work. Have a great